I'm creating now a new application. This application is called CFO Invoice Check. I have to associate this application to a certain organization. I'm putting it here to the text center, and I could also share this application now with you or with anybody. And when you come in this application screen and we created this application, it's now time to actually define our processes. And we do that by clicking here on logic. And what we're going to see now is that we can create a new process. And this is invoice mapping. And this process maps an invoice to a cost center and writes an email to the responsible persons. And that's going to be a process. Now you see that we have here a blank canvas on which we can define our business process. Remember this slide? Input, output, task. Let's start with the inputs. We would like to input a invoice. So this is a variable that changes from each case to each case. And this input is not a piece of text, but it's a file. And in our case, it's a file of the type PDF. Then we have a department mapping. I call this mapping. And this is also a file of type PDF. Generally, we could also put other things in here, like text. We could also put OCR documents in here. So if you have a scanned image version where you need to still extract the text before you can read something, we can also have this. And those are variables that we can now use in our application. And to start with this thing, we are going to create an application where we have here a text completion model. And I am going to use GPT-4o. So there's a bunch of different models that are hooked up to this platform that makes it so easy to try out and evaluate different models against each other. I have here a prompt and I have a task. And all that the task does is basically taking a model and the prompt and is executing that model on that prompt. So now my prompt, I say, I have the following invoice. And now I put in my invoice variable that when we execute this process, we are going to fill it in. Map this invoice to a project and tell me who is the responsible person for that invoice. Here is a list of my current projects and cost centers. And then I ingest the mapping. So what we are now going to do is we're going to save this very small process. We're making it more complex in a second, but I'm going to save this process. And what has been done now on the platform is we automatically created an end user application where the end user doesn't have to worry about any prompting. So scaling and reproducibility, you remember from the beginning, but only fill in these two gaps, the invoice and the mapping that we have. I have here an example invoice from AWS that I'm going to show you in a second. And I have here an example mapping that you're going to see in a second that we're going to use. So this is my invoice and this is my mapping with my projects and my departments. I am going to say now I'm executing this process. Just that you see what I just fed in. There's an example invoice that I also just mapped from Amazon Web Service to a company called Mobility Makers GmbH in Stuttgart in Germany. And it's about compute instances, Amazon S3, Lambda functions, Round 52, with a tag called Project Microserver in here. There's unit prices and there has about 700 euros, including VAT. That is supposed to be paid. And the mapping to the departments and to the projects. You see here that there's a project name, that there's a project department, there's a project lead, and there is a contact email for these people. And we have here several pages of those. And when we go back to our application, we actually saw that this application here has been executed, and we get the answer based on the details in the invoice and the list of your projects. It pertains the term microserver, and let me map that to the relevant details. Project microserver, IT department, project lead with Max Meyer. and the contact email is maxmeyer@mobilitymakers.com. And we should send him an email. That's the first step of this process. And what we are actually doing now is we are going to not only let him tell us who to send this email to, but also create the email for us. And therefore, we are making a second step with another text completion task and another prompt. What I'm going to do now here is I'm going to basically chain the output of the first prompt to the input of the second one. So I say, I am the CFO of a large mobility company, and I need to do invoice mapping to cost centers and projects. I already analyzed an invoice and found the responsible person for it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chain the output of the first part to the input of the second task that I have. And then I'm creating another prompt where I'm saying, write a professional but friendly sounding email to the identified colleague asking for the justification of the costs of the following invoice. Then I refer to the invoice again, ask in the end if everything is all right. And I'm going to put that as the last part of this task over here. So now we have a process that is a little bit more complex. And this here can get really, really complex. I have clients where we have like 40 steps that you do in this process. But this here is enough to show you the very beginning. And here's my invoice that we had again. And here is my mapping to project departments. What I'm doing now is we're using this modeling interface, and we will see now, here's the intermediate results, where it says the invoice for various AWS services are relating to microserver. Max Meyer is the lead. And now we are taking this and we are creating in the second step the email. This is the description of charges. Could you please look into the justifications and tell me if I should? Yeah. And when we are going with this approach, we actually build process templates, and not only just prompts, but we really build end-to-end process templates and applications that we can scale and that we can also give to others in our department.